Hey, it's Mike and Blaine, and guess what? It's another episode of Nobody Told Me. This time it's episode 11, and we're talking about nobody told me that more things than COVID can disrupt your business. Am I right?
You're right. And they can be little, they can be big, they can be awful because it's always the worst timing for all those things. So um, before we kick off on that, which is a great topic, what are you drinking today?
Hey, you know what? All right, so this is the first time I went outside of Texas, right? First time I went outside
Oh,
of
no.
Texas, but I went Haze IPA from it's a brewing company out of California. It's called the California Beer Company, or a
Oh,
California. It's Firestone is a California beer company. So the name of it is Firestone, Haze IPA. And I did it specifically for this topic because, well, we took last week off. Guess what happened to me? Yeah, I got COVID and my mind has been in a haze.
for 2 weeks. Yeah.
For 2 weeks, I've been in a haze, a COVID haze. So anyway, that's what I'm going to have, an IPA. What do you got?
All right. Well, I've gone way off the mark today, but I've loved these guys, and I just had to do this. Um, it is. Let's see if I can get the light better so you can actually read. Fallen Timber Meadjito, and it's a
Oh,
mead.
wow.
And it's a mead from I can't even remember they're down in southern Alberta, really little town. I've never actually been to it. But I tried this mead, and it's unbelievably good. And this is the color. It's a
Oh, wow.
weird
That is so
color.
cool.
It is just it's delicious. It's sweet, and it's like got that honey flavor that you'd see in a mead, and then it's got
Yeah.
that mint. That's I guess why they call it Meadjito. It's like a mojito. It tastes a lot like a mojito, to be completely honest, but it's got a little more, what do you say, volume to it, a little more meat to it. So
Got it. Well, when I think of mead, I always think about like Vikings and the big long hall. They got the horn that they're drinking it out
yeah,
of.
exactly.
And that doesn't look like it at all.
No, and I'd never tried mead before. Some of these beer, conference, not conference, a beer, like what do you call it, where you go walk around and taste all the beer. It's probably because I've been to those, you can't remember what they're called. It's on the tip of my mind. But anyway, it was the first time I tried this mead from Fallen Timber. And they were like, I was blown away because I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, this stuff is terrific. And this Meadjito, I think, sells like hotcakes for these guys because it is just so incredibly good. So it's anyway, that's
Yeah, very cool. Well,
my
this
drink
is
today.
very smooth. So if you're looking for an IPA that doesn't choke you, there you go.
Nice, good
Very
to know.
smooth.
I haven't tried that one, so I'll have to track that one down.
Yeah. So okay. So we're talking about like disruption. We're talking about the like interruptions, right? And I brought it up because again, I came up with COVID, and that's been kind of a hot topic and relevant. Uh, and nobody prepared for that. Nobody prepared to shut
Yeah,
down their business. Nobody prepared to go to 50% capacity. Nobody prepared, for on and on and on down the list of all the
yeah.
restrictions that we had to deal with. Uh, so, I mean, let's talk about your company first. I mean, what'd you have to do? Anything?
Well, we were really fortunate because our entire team is remote, and so we were kind of remote before other people were remote. So we have our systems in place. We have we have staff in Vancouver, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, like, so all in Canada. And so we're scattered across country, but we had the systems in place. We had all of our online systems and our Slack channels and our Zoom. All of that was what we were really used to. Um, what really felt odd was it was like the rest of the world around us just shut down. Like when there was that right before they kind of literally shut everything down. It's like it was all this unknowns and questions and everything, and then it felt like overnight the world shut down around us. And so like we weren't suddenly having to go home from the office and set up and things like that, but when everybody else does, it's just as disruptive. It's like
Mhm.
the clients or the businesses have all basically battened down the hatches. They've shut down. They're like, I just want to see if I can make it till Friday. Totally, like, just overnight sort of changed everything. So we had to do some major adaptations for our business and the channels we were addressing and everything else. but we're really fortunate that it wasn't as big of a disruption as a lot of other companies where suddenly it's like, we got to make everybody remote and fast.
Yeah, I mean, there was already kind of a slight interest in remote for a lot of companies, but I think it really pushed some people over the edge. Like, we're going to have to, right? We're not going to allow this to hurt us again. Now, I mean, but think about moving remote. Have you heard the stories about commercial real estate of how, these companies, they pretty much just emptied out or went to half staff or anything like that. And now you have just floor upon floor empty.
Yeah.
So I mean, nobody was really, even what you think is a very solid industry like real estate, like leasing, those type of things.
Yeah.
They actually have got a big hill to climb out of it, because now that we're all used to working from home, how do you get people to take back on office space?
Yeah. And it's like I was just at a friend of mine's office a couple of weeks ago for a fantasy football draft, but what was funny, it was sort of funny, but kind of shocking as we go in, we sit down, it's first time, it's like, I could see all the guys haven't seen people in, 2 years, let alone here's this little circle of the guys that were drafting. But what was interesting is looking at his office, because it's like, yeah, like we cleared out, virtually nobody's back. He said they're now just starting to trickle in. And so, there were desks, like computers were gone and things were rearranged. And it was all this stuff because they had to rapidly go lift up this entire office of all these people and stick them all at home. And now that they're starting to trickle back in, now there's all this space between the computer workstations and everything is just so disruptive. But what he's saying is, he was like, well, yeah, I don't know, we stay in this office or we go to a different one, or like, there's all these questions that they have to ask themselves about office space, because, everyone's kind of thinking, like, are they all going to come back, or is it going to be half or partial shared desks? Like, you don't want to spend all that money on real estate if you don't need to.
Well, that's why, I mean, there's a company up in Canada, I think in Toronto, and I forget the name now, where they're just saying it's like a shared space where you just kind of rent it for a few hours or a day per month, right? It's a subscription base. You just come in, and I'm like going, there's a lot of companies starting to take advantage of just that, saying we can mostly get our stuff done at home, but there's still some benefit to sitting in a room wargaming or planning something out, or that face-to-face interaction that I think I'm getting used to it now with Zoom, but there for a while it's not the same, right?
It's not the same. No.
Right.
It's, and like, I've been doing a lot of the face-to-faces over the last few months. It's all been like outside on a patio, one-on-one, because then it's, it's fairly comfortable. And I don't like being in a place with a cram full of people, of course. But it's changed everything up. And as like, because we work remote, I feel a little bit isolated, but I wonder if there's a space now, because it used to be basically this like office space and you're in a 10-year lease and you're stuck. And like, I've had that before. Or there's kind of like WeWork, and there's these like little tiny, you come and go and you share a desk. I think there's probably a lot of room in the middle now. And I think that's more what you're describing, is it sounded like an upgraded premium WeWork almost, where you get a little more, but it's shared space, but it's a little more pro maybe.
Yeah, probably so. And this time last year, I was actually trying to build a team and put people in an office, and we were still distant, right? It was the beginning of a team, so there wasn't a lot of people. We weren't crowded, but there was so much hassle associated with it, meaning that we were actually going through at the end of the day and wiping everything down, right? Taking wipes and those type of things. I mean, there's like, things that you wouldn't have thought about prior to that. I mean, like, really, do I need to wipe down the microwave handle? Every night, or every door handle, or things like that, just things I hadn't thought about before. So there's a small amount of disruption there as well. So I mean, COVID was the biggie, right? COVID was like it changed the way we looked at everything. And I'm sure there were some industries that took a major hit. I mean, maybe even like Uber, because who was going anywhere?
I haven't been in an Uber, although boy, they've delivered a lot of food to me. I'll tell you that.
Well,
but,
okay, well, there you go.
But I haven't been in an Uber and we were like in them a lot. And now I haven't been in one. for 2 years or whatever. And travel, like haven't been traveling, haven't been in hotels, haven't been in the Ubers going back and forth from the hotel to the conference and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
That's changed dramatically. And this is the biggest, this is not just a business disruption, it's a societal one. Like it's just so widespread. I remember, and we've talked about this before, my last business, but we got hit in the recession, and that was in a way what led to dry run with what I'm doing now. Cause it's just like, okay, that was a really fundamental shift. That was sort of business interruption because the economy kind of ground to a halt. And talking about space, that led to today trying to, liking the idea of a remote team, because when that hit, we were doing well, we're traveling over the world, we're going to do all this stuff. We got this massive new space, we leased cars, the whole works, we had an editing suite with all stuff. And then pretty soon things slowed down. You're like, ooh, I think we're going to stop this expansion. And boy, what are we going to do with that 1,000 square feet? Like we had one point, I think we had, 2 ping pong tables and a foosball in one room or so. Like we had all this room.
Yeah.
It's like my office was probably about the size of my basement that I'm in now. It is like, what do you do with all this? It was a real lesson that, and you're kind of locked in, right? And it was such a hard lesson, and it made me, question those things, and does that make sense? And that was a different sort of a big business interruption, but not like we're facing now, of course.
No, I mean, it's made me rethink pretty much everything. But I can tell you that maybe there was a little bit of disruption in my life, and trying to figure out what my daily routine was going to be. But I think I'm either back to or even more productive than I was pre-COVID, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
What about you? And probably because I can just easily sneak in here and do something if I need to.
Yeah.
Whereas before I might have took a note, or not worried about it as much.
Yeah. Well, I think that like my last company, like I said, we had all this space and everything. And then when I sold that company, and I was doing, like more consulting work and things like that for a while, until I kind of went, okay, here's what my next thing is. Right. So I was working from home right out of the gate, right from there. And just developed maybe it's part of my personality, but developed that that sort of drive, but also the consistency that's so important. And I sort of developed that now, and now it's just second nature. I don't think if I went to an office, I'd probably be less productive in an office, because there'd be people around and stuff, right? And here I go in the basement, and as long as I'm not kind of upstairs, there's like, this is it. So I get down here, I lock in. The one thing that I've done to work remotely, for people that are working remotely, is I try and keep really quite strict hours. And I know you've said the same thing. You close the door at the end of the day, because if you dabble in it and you pop in and stuff when you really don't need to, like sometimes you need to, but when you really don't need to, it starts to get things, I find, really unsettled. And I think overall I become less productive than if I'm like start and I'm like, I gotta get shit done. And I'm just like, I tend to sprint when I work. Like I go, and then all of a sudden you look up and go, like right before you came on, like, holy smokes, my neck is so sore, I can barely, handle it, because I was hunched over doing all this stuff for hours in a row, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if at 5, 6 o'clock, if I don't walk through that door and shut it, I've got a dog and 2 other people that are looking at me like, we need attention too. So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So
exactly.
I try to put it behind me. But the whole premise of this episode for me was, hey, it's more than COVID, because I kept telling people, even when COVID started, I said, it's not always COVID that causes this, right? Think about what's happening right now in, the Gulf Coast in Louisiana with Hurricane Ida, and before that it was the other hurricane that took out Houston and Miami. I mean, just natural disasters, wildfires. There are things that can pop up in an instant.
Yep.
that cause you to shut down your business for a period of time. That's what I want to talk about, is because it isn't just COVID. It could be natural disasters. It could be a death in your family. It could be just an unexpected trip that you got to take or you didn't think of. It could be a government regulation that changes, that forces you to reset. I've even had it to where I've even had it to where a delay in a product launch caused you to change everything, right? From a business or cash planning standpoint. So, I mean, what are some things that maybe have happened to you that makes you think and maybe even plan a little bit farther out in case something like that happens?
Yeah, like it's like I had a family member that was very ill for a while, and that was a massive disruption, and it hits in an instant. And it was probably months and months where I don't remember months and months, to be completely honest, but it was months and months of in and out. And fortunately I had a big enough sort of team that the business somehow sort of carried on. Right. But yeah, like you have to, if you don't have that, like, what do you do? So there's, it's hard to plan for that stuff, but you really need to, you have to have that in place. But, there's other things that, like, I think back and there's other things that would be so disruptive and you don't really think of them as business disruption, but the timing was always so awful. And there's a couple that I remember. I don't remember the circumstances around it, except that there was a deadline, because it always happens when there's a deadline. And I remember in the building that the fire alarm went off, and it was then the fire department had to show up, and then they had to clear everybody out. And you're just kind of like, we were like, we're at a deadline and we got to get this stuff done. And now we're standing in the parking lot, and you're just kind of, it wasn't a long interruption, but it was very poorly timed. Like it was, and I remember another time when the internet went out in the building, and the same thing. It's like, what, you can't even work. Like, you don't really think about those things. But what if, here's like an example. I was talking with someone online a few weeks ago, and she was in BC, in British Columbia. And the wildfires out there are almost as bad as California right now. And we're on the phone, and she's like, yeah, the fire was heading towards the power station. And she says, we almost got evacuated yesterday. But she said, can you imagine if that power station got burned? That isn't up and running in a week. It could be a year. And it all came down to the wind shifted direction enough that it didn't burn down the entire power station. Well, could you imagine losing power, or losing for whatever reason? It's like, yeah, we just lost internet, and it might not be just down for half a day or an hour. What if it was down for a week? What if there was some like things like that can be massively disruptive? That, what do you change back to paper and mail? Like, what do you do? Right.
Well, that happened here in Texas last year. It was like we had what everybody calls now Snowmageddon. The 100-year snow in Texas that knocked out the complete power grid for the whole state.
I read about
for
that.
For a week. I mean, I was lucky that the gas fireplace worked, or I wouldn't have been able to heat the house, right? And these are, we're not. Heck, I told you I don't even have coats because it's always like 900 degrees in San Antonio. So I mean, we're like going, how do we even keep the house warm? I mean, we've got water that we took before the water went out and put it in coolers, and then we were having to boil it before we used it. And this is just to live. And then, then you got, people that aren't in Texas are calling you up going, hey, how's sales today? Or how's this? And I'm going, dude, I'm trying to figure out how to cook ramen or charge a phone. I don't have time to think about business right now. So, but there's a blip. There's a big air gap that happens, inside your business.
Well, we had a massive heat wave out in Western Canada here earlier this year, just a couple months ago, and like record-setting heat, like much higher than I'd ever remember in my entire life. And so, to be honest with you, like, we were okay here. We had the air conditioner fired up, but my co-founder out in just north of Vancouver, he didn't have air conditioning. Just moved into his new condo, didn't have air conditioning. And I think he has it now. But he basically, he's like, yeah, I can barely function. Cause when you're talking about like it's 100 degrees or whatever in there. And then he eventually went and like got a hotel for a couple of days because it's too hot. You can't even work. Like, and I don't, it's just, you're not planning on that, of course, but it hits, and it's
Yeah.
not something we had sort of predicted, right?
Well, you talk about, I mean, when I lived in Seattle, we didn't have air conditioner either. I mean, and there was probably only 2 days a year you needed it anyway. But that was funny. That same heat wave you're talking about, my friends in Toronto, they went through the same thing and Slack was blowing up. Oh my God, it's 37 or 30, whatever number they use is in the 30s. I'm
Yeah.
like going, I don't know what that is. So I had to convert it. Yeah, the Fahrenheit Celsius thing. It was
Yeah.
like 84 degrees. I'm like going, what? You guys, and I sent them the week of Texas. It was like 99 or 100 and low of
Yeah.
72 every day. So they're going, I understand it's different. It's not hot yet. You guys are gonna be okay.
Yeah, they'll survive.
That's right.
Yeah, we've actually, I should tell you, we have had one a couple of years ago. I remember there's a heat warning on the radio, and I'm trying to think of what it would convert to. It'd be like high 70s for you, I think. And it was like they actually did a heat warning on the radio. And and we're down, like generally we're down in Arizona for half the year, but we're sometimes pop down there in the summer. So I felt real heat down there, and I just thought it was
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
hilarious. Like this is a nice day, guys. Like enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, here, I mean, we'll get stretches sometimes of like 10 days straight at 100 plus. And I think from what I hear and what I remember, 100 in San Antonio and 100 in Arizona are different. The feel is different, right?
I would
I
guess,
know it
yeah.
is. Yeah. I mean, just I think it's the humidity, right? Because
Yeah.
100 here, just pretend if you had a wet towel and you put it on your face and
Yeah.
you had to breathe through that.
Yeah, that's
Right?
what
That's
my
exactly.
staff in Toronto have been saying, that when it gets really hot out there, it's because the humidex is so muggy. And in Arizona, it's like that's just the temperature. Like it's just
Yeah.
bone dry. So
Yeah.
it is like a lot easier. Even to Edmonton here, which is sort of dry in Celsius. I always say it's the 5-degree buffer. So
Yeah.
if it was
Yeah.
40 in Arizona, it'd be like 35 here. It would feel the same because it's a little bit. And then you get to a place like where you guys are, where there's a lot of humidity. I don't think I would do well there. The last place I was really humid was in downtown Atlanta it was
Oh,
like
that's
July or
miserable.
something. And it was hot
Miserable.
and muggy. It's just like you're just kind of pushing the
Yeah.
moisture away kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can just feel it. There's always kind of a wetness on you, right? Just always a
Yeah.
wetness. And I'll tell you, if I go over to that window and just look out at it on a hot day, I'll start sweating just from the heat from the window.
uh,
It's
it's
crazy.
it's a different world, but yeah. But we could
Right.
shut down up here if it got too extreme cold too. Like there's times like that when or a blizzard or something, right? And it's pretty hard to shut us down here with cold, but it happens sometimes, right? And you're not ready for it. And like I said, it's always those little ones that's the most inconvenient time generally. It's not like, oh, I could have taken the day off anyway. It's like, no, I had to deliver, this to get this on the FedEx or whatever. It's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. So really what we're talking about, then when you talk about disruption, you're talking about a shift in, I'm gonna call it spending. Because I mean, there's not a lot of revenue that comes in during this disruption, but you've got a spending gap that happens where you either have some things you still have to pay for, or you shift it out to another or later period, right? And then that's kind of what you have to do. And because you know it's going to exist, I think that's the lesson I want people to walk away from is, something's going to happen. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's an internet down, a tornado, a lightning strike takes out your building. I mean, something is going to happen. What can I do to prepare? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
where I want people to start thinking is, okay, well, we would move remote and most people might still have, internet at home. If the office went down, maybe we can still
Yeah.
work at home.
Yeah.
Or there's got to be some type of cash set aside to be able to last a specific amount of time. Now they
Yeah.
say natural disasters, they say it takes almost 18 months to recover from a natural disaster. If you're down for a month, it may be 18 months before it's back to normal some way.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might be a long estimate, but I think you should prepare to, not operate with any money. We'll just say days cash on hand, which I call days to bankruptcy.
Mhm.
I mean,
Exactly.
right? How long can I live? If something bad happens.
Yeah.
I think you want that somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth, just as a cushion
Yeah.
of expenses, of operating expense. I mean, what's kind of your rule of thumb?
Yeah, well, that's what we recommend to people when they're talking with us or our team is exactly that try and maintain over 3 months, basically in the bank. And so you don't go out and buy stuff and you spend that. It's like, that's your bankroll. Keep that minimum in the bank, just for that reason. Now, sometimes you're talking with businesses and they just kind of laugh like, yeah, there's no freaking way. Like we're lucky if
Yeah,
we have
good
money in the
luck
bank for
getting
3
there. Yeah.
days, right?
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a guideline. The other thing that on the financial side that I do every time I'm doing my budgeting projections and everything, I have a minimum 15% built in of just, it's going to go. It just build in 15% and call it miscellaneous, because it's going to hit you with shit you never thought was going to come. And
That's right.
that's just how it is. Right. And live to that budget. So, if you have 3 months in the bank and you've got, your budgeting for that, and so you always have that room, gives you a little bit of safety. It's going to be real tough to weather like an 18-month or COVID here. Like if there weren't these, different government grant programs and everything, that I think sometimes have gotten a bit of a bad name, but the fact is there'd be Death Valley out there without it.
Oh, exactly right. Exactly. Especially, I mean, it was free money. Those PPP loans are free money. I mean, as long as you just used it the way it was supposed to be, uh,
Yeah.
60% of it had to go to employees, to payroll.
Yeah.
That should be a no-brainer, right? I mean, you want to keep your team moving, you want to keep everything
Absolutely.
going.
Yeah.
I mean, 60% or more should have went to your employees anyway.
Yeah.
I
And
get
unfortunately, there's a lot of sectors and a lot of businesses, like it was in COVID, it was like highs and lows, right? A lot of sectors that were hit really hard, that is keeping them alive. But if they had that 3 months, that's long gone. And they're just scraping by, surviving, hoping that they can survive it at some point when all of it stops. And if it hasn't opened up and it's this little hesitations with everything, it's there's still businesses that are going to get hit really hard with that. And it's but like we're talking about preparing, and there's that financial side of, okay, you want to have that bankroll and you want to be prepared and you want to know, can you get a line of credit? Can you I still remember one of the most aggravating conversations I had with a banker in my life, and we actually moved banks over it. We walked in and we had grown quite a bit. And this is my last business. We'd grown quite a bit. And so we went into the bank and I sat down and said, we've over doubled in size. What would you recommend would be a good size for a line of credit for us? We want to get a line of credit set up because, stuff's getting expensive. We want to have that flexibility, and we've grown so much that the one we have probably isn't what we're looking for. Okay, let me look into that and I'll get back to you. So we go back a week later for the meeting, and they slide loan documents across the table. Tried to give me a loan.
Yeah.
What do I need a loan for? I was trying to get a line of credit. We got money. I was just trying to see if we could get a line of credit. And they were trying to get me signed up for a loan for money I never even asked for. And I just thought, this person does not, despite the little tag on her desk, she does not understand business. And that is not what we're asking for. And we went, we got up, we walked out and we're like, we're changing banks. I was so frustrated. We literally changed banks over that. It just was like, but that's what we were doing, is we were doing really well. It's like, this is the time let's get a line of credit set up. Let's get these things set up so that we have room to move. That's the time you want to do it. Not when after disaster's already struck. It's when you're doing fine, when things are going fine.
Right. You don't buy umbrellas after it rains.
Exactly. That's a good, great illustration.
That's
Yeah.
right. You know, what's funny is that one of the top complaints by business owners is one of the reasons why I wrote this book about their banker. It's they don't
Yeah.
understand my business, right? They don't understand my
Yeah.
business. That was one of the reasons, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they just don't. There's a disconnect between their loan products and the capacity and the limitations of the business. So like when they don't understand what you're up against a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. And it's, that's, that can be a really tough one to get over and to find the right fit and everything. But it's really important to have that, the finances there. But then there's the other side of it is like, man, when there was a time when if our office burned down, we would have been in serious trouble because everything was physical. Like
Yeah.
everything was on drives, on computers, and we backed everything up. But where were the backups? And I still remember having it's a hard drive that was about the size of a toaster, and it was and it weighed like I don't know how many pounds. And I would bring that back and forth like once a month, plug her in and start, backing crap up and then taking it home. So we had our offsite backup. And that was the best we could do for this backup. What's funny now is so much of our information is up in the cloud that if the internet's down, you're like, oh man, like I should add backups on my computer. So with some of the stuff that's really important, it's like, well, it's on my computer and I have various backups shooting automatically everywhere into the cloud. And I've got local and, trying to think about this stuff. But that's really important is if you had to leave the office and go home, can you continue work? And if the internet's down, can you continue work? And, just to be able to cover your bases, right?
Well, that's one of the cool things though about using, we'll say, an iCloud or AWS or Azure, right? Because they have built-in redundancies.
Yep.
When you put it in there. So I mean, they're really trying to help business continuity that way. If their data center in Washington goes down, then you can pull it from wherever it is. I mean, Kentucky or wherever the other one is. They got like 4 or 5 data centers. And speaking of Microsoft, we talked about how much money to set aside. I read an article recently. You know how much Bill Gates set aside in his cash reserves?
Oh, I can't even imagine what that would be.
There was actual formula for it though.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was 1 year's salaries. So whatever total salaries was from Microsoft, he kept that in reserve. He said because he never wanted his employees to pay for a mistake that he made. Right.
Yeah.
And he thought, well, if I had 1 year's worth of salaries, like, we could work out any problem in a year. So that's a long way from, some of our clients that we've worked with, asking them to have 3 months worth to a year's worth of salary at Microsoft. But you can tell how serious this is if Bill Gates says, I kept a year's worth of everyone's salaries in reserve.
Yeah. And
at
that's
minimum,
a nice luxury to have.
Can you imagine? I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah. That'd be a nice day.
Yeah, that's craziness.
But there are things that there are so many things to really consider when you're if your business is disrupted, how would you keep it going? Like how and like you said, like it's finances, it's access to like actually how you do your work. I've been talking to things I'm relate with was like we kind of work remotely in the cloud on machines, all that kind of stuff. But actually, the friend of mine, this is a kind of an interesting story. Their business needed to, and I don't even really understand what the equipment was, but there was some really expensive, fancy truck that was equipment that had some kind of weird pump thing in the back. I don't remember all what it was. They had bought the truck in Ontario, and then COVID hit. And suddenly everything shut down. And at that time, he's like, well, I'm not getting on a plane. Like, I don't want to get on a plane to try and fly down there. And then you're really not supposed to drive across all these provincial borders at that point. And now they're like, we've got money sitting there. And this isn't like a truck price. This is a really expensive piece of equipment that's sitting on a lot on the other side of the country. And like, I don't know how we're going to get that over here, like how and when, and it's costing us money, both on we're paying for the thing and we can't be making any revenue off of it. And like, just a bizarre circumstance, right?
Could they have shipped it?
I don't recall anymore what that, because part of it was also like the you're sort of playing the odds, and it's like the economics of it and how much it costs. And is it better to, if we wait, because what COVID was like at the start, it was like, do you think this will be like over in a month or 2 months or 5 months, and that just keeps going and dragging. And now things are kind of spiking up, and it's like everyone's kind of like, yeah, whatever. We'll just got to do what we got to do.
Now you guys just opened up, right? Because I mean, my friends in Toronto, they said they hadn't seen each other in like 18 months, and they had a happy hour last week where they finally all got together for the first time. I mean, are you guys just now opening up?
Well, we opened up before Ontario, so we opened up. Come probably in. I'm trying to remember now, May or June maybe. Maybe it was later than that, because there was this weird time when, you could walk in and get takeout, but you couldn't sit on a patio in a restaurant or anything like that. And I'm trying to remember if it was June maybe, when we could finally go and sit down, but it was more like with one other person outside. You still can do groups, and then that started to ease up, and then suddenly this variant, it all spikes up again. And now they're shutting stuff back down again. But the weirdest experience for me is just a couple of weeks ago, we had a family reunion that seemed to sneak in between. Like it was things that kind of like they opened up, and it got to the point where, okay, I think we're good. And then we, went to the family reunion, and then things are starting to kind of spike again. And now, like today, I don't even think we could do it. Like literally a few weeks later, we just I don't think we would actually be allowed to do it anymore, because we had that little itty bitty window in the middle there. So it's odd, very odd,
Yeah, see, and here I am in Texas, and I'm going to 2 football games. I'm going to a high school game tomorrow night, and then I'm going to a college game on Saturday.
You guys are more open than we are, I think. We have had football games here, but I don't.
More COVID.
Yeah, I think there's just the tolerance, I suppose, cultural tolerance is different, I suppose. But we have had some I haven't been to one of the football games, but I know they have had some football games. I don't know if they were running at full capacity or partial capacity. But then our local team in the Canadian Football League had they had a game scheduled last week in Toronto, and it was canceled because like 19 players got COVID, or 18 players, something like this. And so I have no idea now, like, are they playing this weekend, or is it not for another month? Like, I have no idea what they're doing with this. But it was actually this outbreak in the team, not the fans.
Yeah, that's funny. So, all right. So think about this. I think the smaller you are, if I look at this from a hyper local perspective, there are more things that can hurt your business than maybe the larger companies. I think, like maybe even one employee just decides they're done and they quit. I mean, that's a disruption, right? In some cases, where it might take you 30 to 60 days just to rebound from that.
Easily. And there's two sides. It's almost like if you have fortunately, I haven't had this in a lot of years, but if you have a bad employee, it could end up being a business disruption for you with them still around until you get rid of them.
That's true.
Yeah, like you could actually have an employee leave or off sick, or and we've had that. Fortunately, we haven't had any COVID, but we've had the odd time, like we got a small team here and someone's sick and they're gone for a few days, and it's like, wow, you notice it because we're a small team and everyone has to carry a lot, and there aren't a bunch of backups. It's not like we've got this, it's like you just put in the second string and third string guy. Like, no, like you've got to survive, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, especially in small teams, if there are silos though that slightly overlap. I'm thinking like sales and marketing. I mean, you could be blocked. Like, I can't do anything. I'm blocked. Or a product feature that's supposed to be deployed, and you've got a whole sales team ready, a marketing team ready to promote it and go. and yet there's
Well
no product. You're just waiting. You know, you're in this
Yeah.
waiting game. You know, what do you do to fill that gap, and how long a
Yeah.
gap is it going to be?
And as a small business, like it is such a challenge to, like, you want that ability to have that backup. You want to be able to kind of keep going, but you can't employ extra people just to sort of play backup. Like everyone has to. So it's a real delicate balance of trying to bring in people that might be able to do a little, cross and do a little more over here, a little more over there. And, play up a little bit if they have to, play down a little bit if they have to. It's a real challenge, and it's something to really think about, because it can get really disruptive really quickly with, like you said, like a single person, wrong time,
Yeah.
wrong place, wrong person, and it can be really tricky.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of recap, right? Kind of a small recap on what we did. First of all, we said, hey, it's more than COVID. Disruptions come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. I mean, for everything from natural disaster to death in the family, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it could be anything that disrupts your business. But what we're saying is, hey, have some contingencies kind of built in.
Yeah.
What if scenarios. If you're going to be a doomsday prepper, I mean, now's kind of the time to do that, right?
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah.
what happens if, and then have some money set aside, right, in reserves. And we think that 3 months is a good number, right? 3 to 6 months, 3 months at a minimum is a good number to kind of have. And what we're talking about is operating expense.
Yeah.
And then, hey, I mean, my last thing was like on pretty good. This Mind Haze IPA is pretty good. That's my last recommendation is, if you need a kind of a smooth IPA, try this one, Firestone Walker.
Nice. And Firestone they make some great beers, by the way. Like I've had some really terrific ones from there. And yeah, and I would just add on to that, on the technical side, make sure, again, don't learn the hard way. Make sure right now, if you don't have good backup systems, you get good backup systems. You have cloud systems, local system, whatever. Make sure your team is doing that. And they don't just say they're doing it, they actually are doing it, because you don't want to find out the hard way. There's a lot of things that you can start to just look at in your business. What are some of the worst case scenarios, and start thinking about it, and have some sort of preparation in place for it. That's, we're relating it to the businesses we've run, but of course there's a lot of things we can't predict, but you can if you sit down and take a little time and have it ready. Meadjito, some mead. I highly recommend it, from Fallen Timber. And if they I think I don't know how far they distribute outside of Alberta, but I would check your local meadery for some good mead.
Right on. All right. So you've been listening to Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. I'm Mike Mylan. That is the man, the myth, the legend. His name is Blaine Birch. And great one. Once again, I appreciate this.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
All right. We'll see you next time.